Caleb, what was your favorite moment of Kobe growing up? Do you have a certain moment that you remember?
You remember the All-Star game where Wade broke his nose? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do
Okay.
remember that.
You remember whenever the Heat and Lakers played after that, and
Oh yeah.
he was going right at Wade the entire time, dude. I love that. Dude, that's probably my favorite one. Or there's so many good moments against Wade too, because he had that crazy ass game winner. Dude, there's a bunch of just great moments, man. It's just, but I would say that game after after Wade broke his nose, and then they played the Heat, and he was just going at him. I would say that's up there. Obviously, I'm not going to pick the 2010 Finals Game 7 where he beat my Celtics, but I mean, if you want to looking back at it now, that's probably one of my favorite ones to watch. And I know people want to say, but he beat your Celtics. Like, I don't give a shit. Okay, I'm a fan of good basketball, and that was one of the finest displays of basketball in a closeout Game 7 I've ever seen in my life. I would say those two for me. Those two moments.
Yeah, if I had to break
Or
it,
the last game. Or the last game. The last game was just because I cried during that last game, bro. That last game was sad.
speaking of that last game, I was watching it at a bar in Sacramento. And again, Sac, we hate Kobe, right?
Alcoholic.
No, it was at a sports bar, you idiot. It was a sports bar in Sacramento called Firestone. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. Um, they were showing the Kobe game, and I remember there was a ton of Kings fans, just a ton of NBA fans. And as each point, like you got to remember, Caleb, this was the same night that the Warriors were going to break the record for the most
Mm-hmm.
wins in NBA history. And every single person's eyes were tuned in on what? Not the Warrior game. They were tuning in on that Laker game. There were so many celebrities at that game. It was crazy. And the whole bar was chanting Kobe. I have videos of it. And if I have it, I'll clip it in here. It was insane. I would say my favorite two moments, if I could break it down to two. One was my first game ever of watching Kobe in person, Kings versus Lakers, home opener. Kobe dropped like 40 points and he was a lights out killer and they ended up beating us. And I was just like, man, I can't hate on it. You know, you just can't hate on the greatness. Being able to witness that was something that I remember till this day, and I'll remember for the rest of my life. And then the last one was Kobe's last game in Sacramento. They did a whole tribute for him. He was old and he was bad, Caleb. He was having a really bad year. But because he came back in one of his favorite places, he says Arco Arena was one of his favorite arenas. He killed it that night. And I along with several other Kings and Laker fans were cheering him on that night. Kings ended up winning, but that was one of the highlights that I've ever had. And yeah,
I want to mention one more game. I
yeah,
just probably like 2 weeks ago, I just rewatched his I mean, salute video from the Celtics whenever it was over after the game. And it's like you heard that crowd. I've never heard the Celtics crowd chant Kobe's name. But it's like it's just a testament to like how impactful he was for basketball. He had the biggest rivalry in pro sports in pro basketball history. He had them chanting his name, and he was like waving by, and you saw him going out hugging like the Celtics owner, Danny Ainge. Like he was hugging these guys. Like they went to war together, but it's like you know what I mean, like a war versus each other. But like at the end of the day, he was still more supreme than just basketball in general. Like for him to be able to command respect from his biggest rival's fan base, it's crazy to me. But it's a testament to how awesome of a player he was.
and I will say you brought up a good point about outside of basketball, right? The one thing I will say is Kobe has, to me, impacted me to even do this podcast. I started off coaching, and one person I would always look into was Kobe because Kobe coached his daughter. And even before that, I looked into Kobe's quotes. If you listen to a lot of the quotes, and I would post a lot of them on my story, um, especially when I was coaching, I would use them as motivation for myself. We're not going to spend too much more time talking about him. I'm sure a lot of you guys will hear a ton of people covering Kobe today, but um, we wanted to cover him for a little bit today because today is the day, the 1 year anniversary since he's passed. And, hopefully we'll be able to see another player like him in the future.